The unbiased news reports are true. Video games are responsible for all of the world's problems nowadays. They rot the brains of our youth and lead them to violence, crime, and worst of all, talking about video games on the internet so much that they drop out of college. So please, cover the ears of any children in your midst, for I have found a game so colorful and entertaining that it will capture the heart of any gamer instantly, but its true goal is chilling, as it aims to make fun of tech startups. I found the anti-capitalism roguelike. Over the past few years, roguelikes have arguably taken their place as king of the indie game castle. They dominate this corner of the gaming ecosystem by exploring new genres, pushing boundaries, and branching off of each other in a never-ending tree of innovation and entertainment. With this newfound popularity, a lot of developers are making roguelikes, but not all of them can stack up with the classics or newly produced giants. One trend I've noticed is that roguelikes tend to heavily focus on replayability and an absurd amount of gameplay depth. It makes total sense for the genre, but if there's a pop quiz tomorrow on Enter the Gungeon, Dead Cells, Risk of Rain 2, or Wizard of Legend, let's just say I haven't exactly been studying for the lore section. When it comes to Going Under though, the developers decided to go off in a wildly different direction by making it feel like less of an infinitely replayable game and more of a curated, story-driven experience. And that's the main reason why I wanted to make this review in the first place. A few weeks before the release of Going Under, I began hearing a few murmurs about its design. I was busy working on a video at the time, but when I discovered that the game was about an unpaid intern who battles through the dungeons of failed tech startups, well, what can I say? I prepared an overly professional and respectful message to the developers requesting a review key. Hi, I'm a content creator and heard that there are early release codes for Going Under, and I was wondering if this is the right place to request one. Smiley face, I wrote into the void, still being unfamiliar to this whole contacting developers to ask for a free game thing. All that was left was to wait for a reply. Yo, what's up, man? In Going Under, you assume the role of Jackie, a college graduate who has taken an unpaid marketing internship at a carbonated meal replacement startup called Fizzle. Fizzle has recently been acquired by the shipping corporation Cubicle that has absolutely no similarities to real-life companies I will not name for fear of being hunted down by a legion of delivery drones. After an incredibly motivating and not at all formulaic company advertisement turned opening cutscene, you're introduced to a cast of wacky characters in a game styled entirely around the Allegria art style that's become synonymous with modern tech companies. You know, the simple shapes, flat and friendly designs, bright colors. I mean, I've seen hot characters in video games before, but 2 ovals for a body? Oh my god. Jackie quickly learns that her marketing internship was all a ruse, and is instead tasked with retrieving artifacts from the founders of 3 failed startups buried deep beneath the office building. The first dungeon you explore is Joblin, a failed startup of freelancers hireable for just about anything. With copious amounts of coffee, countless motivational posters, and angled toilets engineered for maximum productivity, I'm sure nothing went wrong. What? They're independent contractors. It's not like they banded together and formed a union or anything. Why did the word union just get censored? What the fuck? It's here that you're introduced to Going Under's unique spin on dungeon crawling. In each room, almost any object can be picked up and wielded as a weapon, from keyboards to fire extinguishers to frozen enemies to giant meat bones. Because hey, why not grab a bite to eat before absolutely clonking some dudes? Most weapons will break easily but can also be thrown at enemies, which forces you to keep your eyes peeled for anything that looks useful. It also constantly changes up combat instead of locking you into a specific weapon or loadout for an entire run. Skill pickups found in shops and challenge rooms will grant you all sorts of fun upgrades, from massive arms to the ability to set anything on fire simply by throwing it. You can also find activatable smartphone apps to strengthen weapons, distract enemies, and summon an invincible rainbow car to plow through everything in sight. You wouldn't download a car, would you? Fuck yeah, I would! The weapon management and skill pickups contribute to making every run of Going Under both chaotic and unique, as there's tons of freedom in how you can approach combat. If you're feeling feisty, you can pick up all manner of swords, spears, and big hammers, but you can also find abilities that let you play safe and strengthen your throwing capabilities. Maybe you'll even grab the Curse of Higher Education, generating a giant debt ball chained to your leg that will massively slow you down, but also has a slight chance to gain the Smart tag, causing it to automatically attack enemies when thrown. I mean, that's one use for a college education. Runs might start out looking simple enough, but you'll pick up so many skills and hats along the way that you might look like this by the end of a long trip through the dungeons. This is no longer Jackie. This is one step higher on the food chain. The game uses mostly horizontal progression in the form of additional abilities that can be unlocked and later found in the dungeons, but also includes a bit of an upgrade system by letting you equip one ability and mentor from the get-go. While there's no serious grinding aspect to Going Under, the gameplay is tough and only gets harder as you progress through variants of each of the 3 dungeons. Most of the difficulty can't be outscaled by permanent upgrades, leaving it to the player to figure out which weapons and strategies work best for them. Unfortunately, as is par for the course when dealing with roguelikes, RNG does poke its ugly head in from time to time. Due to the fact that certain abilities are way more useful than others, some runs can feel like an impossible nightmare, while others will have you barreling through rooms with a gang of charmed buddies while you destroy everything in sight with massively scaled weapons. The pinned skill and mentor system slightly alleviate this problem, but the power difference you can achieve simply based on what weapons and abilities you happen to find can be astronomical. However, this issue led me to discover one of my favorite parts about Going Under. There's a lot of personal improvement involved when it comes to combat. This game is not like most other roguelikes, as getting used to a weapon won't do you much good after it breaks in a few hits, nor is the game jam-packed with enough permanent progression to make bosses a cakewalk unless you turn up the heat. Learning when to throw, when to use charged attacks, and how to approach each floor in general can really make a difference. You're telling me I gotta get better at the game over time? Each of the 3, well, 4, but you can only play that one once, and 5, but that's spoiler territory dungeons, have their own designs, weapons, enemies, final boss, and even currency systems, forcing you to adapt your combat style to your surroundings. Yeah, I said currency systems. What, you thought the game about tech startups wasn't gonna have a dungeon themed around cryptocurrency? Completing the main story generally takes around 10 hours, but if you're looking for a challenge, well, do I have the update for you. How about playing through all of the dungeons back to back on 7 scaling difficulty levels without any of the starting advantages from the regular game? And did I mention there's a new final boss at the end? And did I mention she's hot? One of my favorite parts about Going Under's gameplay is that it feels funny, but not in a controls poorly or isn't enjoyable kind of way. What I mean is that it's hilarious to throw an entire mining rig PC at a rapping skeleton or shoot a goblin so hard he clips into a wall after ragdolling through the air. Watching runs evolve into absolute chaos as you throw infinitely spawning flaming ping pong balls, drift through enemies in cars and minecarts, or activate apps that turn every object in the room into heat-seeking missiles. While not directly related to challenge or depth per se, the comedic variety keeps the game from feeling repetitive. The final mechanic I want to mention is the mentor system, as it'll help me lead into what might be the best aspect of Going Under, the writing and storytelling. Throughout the game, your co-workers will task you with various objectives closely related to their occupation and personalities. Performing missions like purchasing an espresso machine for the panicked accountant or defeating enemies solely with your fists to impress Fizzle's founder will strengthen their friendship with Jackie and unlock mentor abilities that will assist you in your dungeon runs. Or in Swamp's case, he just says funny shit and tells you to light everything on fire. Can do, buddy! Anarchy is an alternative! Upon browsing the Steam reviews for Going Under, I discovered a small trend that I believe extends to the gaming community at large. That is, people love to compare games to other games. It's an easy way to explain something unfamiliar, and hell, I've done it in plenty of my videos, including this one. But I also think there's a bit of a dark side to comparing any game in any genre
genre imaginable to Dark Souls. Just say it's difficult! For Going Under, this manifests as reviews calling the combat more or less ripped straight from Breath of the Wild because weapons have durability and you can throw them. That not being able to achieve the big combo thing that games like Hades or Binding of Isaac have is a drawback, when in reality, Going Under has a different experience in mind. I was curious about what kind of experience the developers were aiming for and how they felt about choosing a focus, so I reached out to Kaylin, the game's creative director. I'm gonna do the thing where I read a quote. Overall, when it came time for story and roguelikeness to butt heads, story generally won out. It's more important to us to make the satire we want to make than to make the tightest systems possible and go toe-to-toe with Hades, for example. I'd like to think we reached a pretty good synthesis, and I think the reviews show that because a lot of roguelite enthusiasts seem to be really into it. But there will always be some people that don't get it, and that's okay. We did end up with something a bit less genre typical. For a roguelike to really capture my attention, it has to excel in some field. Differentiate itself from the floating mass of games in my head by doing something other than just being a game where if you die, you go back to the beginning. Dead Cells has incredibly fluid and satisfying combat. Risk of Rain 2 feels loaded with infinite challenge and variety, and it has online co-op. But sometimes I don't feel like playing a game for 100 hours. Instead, Going Under decides to tread on uncertain ground by elevating the possibilities of a roguelike when it comes to writing. Maybe trying to do something different in a genre where gameplay reigns supreme is less than typical, but the story and ideas behind this game are what make it truly stand out. Going Under is overflowing with comedy and style, and it's not just the dialogue. Every corner of this game has been carefully crafted to drive home its satire as much as humanly possible. The walls of Fizzle and the dungeons are covered with posters of puns and motivational quotes. The loading screens are filled with jokes and references. Going Under has witty item descriptions. How have you not bought it yet? When it comes to storytelling, Aggro Crab could have gone with some sort of thinly veiled analogy or metaphor that very subtly pokes at societal problems through the lens of some, I don't know, corrupted fantasy setting. But instead, being highly familiar with startup culture by living in Seattle, the devs decided to go all out and satirize everything they knew. A lot of the jokes fall into the so real they're scary and depressing yet also hilarious category, and I think the game explores the topics it tackles about harassment, unpaid internships, and corporate ladders in a really meaningful way. The here in my garage guy is a vampire and he gives you curses. Oh wow, a first-person curse. Thanks, it's awful. Rather than playing Going Under simply for the satisfaction of beating it, the desire to learn more about the characters and watch how the story unfolds adds an incredibly powerful form of motivation to a genre often jam-packed with relentless gameplay. Alongside highly customizable assist options, it's a style that I'd love to see in more roguelikes moving into the future, as I think it can also play a big role in maintaining the interest of those less familiar with these types of games. Also, this wouldn't be a complete video of mine without talking about the soundtrack, so it jams. Like jams, but I upped the font size of the word jams on the script so I'd read it louder. The songs of Going Under aren't afraid to make themselves known, and from trap beat boss battles to lo-fi hip-hop dungeon themes, this soundtrack is easily one of the best I've heard in a roguelike. I'd write a whole section about the music if I could elaborate any further than it goes so fucking hard, bro. So hats off to King Felix for cramming so many bangers into a game already bursting with quality. I kept getting out of my chair and doing stupid dances in the middle of writing this review because I had the soundtrack on in the background. At the end of the day, Going Under isn't a game that'll last me hundreds of hours, but I don't need to grind at something for that long to feel like I got my money's worth, nor do I think a roguelike needs that kind of replayability to be successful. Going Under wraps up the story it wants to tell before overstaying its welcome, with the working from home update adding plenty of content and challenge for those looking for more replayability. Even if I did encounter a few small glitches and issues during my playthrough, they were obliterated by the heart and soul carrying the experience. Going Under passes as a social commentary as much as it does a video game, and I'm more than okay with that. Its blatant honesty about corporate greed and workplace discrimination sticks out like a sore thumb, but not in a bad way. And the charm and humor crammed into every corner of its colorful world keep it from feeling like a depressed millennial rambling into the void. There's something about its small scale that feels personal, like you can tell it was made by a team of passionate artists. It is an absolute crime that Going Under hasn't received more attention, because it deserves the world's and then some. I sound like a parent bragging about their child at soccer practice. I didn't even make this fucking game. Going Under has easily solidified itself as one of my favorite games from 2020 and one of my favorite roguelikes, and I highly recommend it regardless of your familiarity with the genre.
Me and the boys on the way to kill capitalism. Let's fucking go, dude. This was crazy.
You'd never see a game like this from a AAA studio, and it has me pretty dang excited for whatever aggro crab decides to cook up next. And also, you can jump on a pogo stick that looks like a frog, and it is called a frogo stick. That's just about all the sappy words of praise I can fit into one review, because I have a feeling the developers might stumble upon this video, and oh gee whiz, am I embarrassed. On that note, thank you for watching. As is tradition, it's time for my quick little self-promotion, so consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like to support what I do, you can get access to various rewards and exclusive content over at patreon.com/yakkocmn. Or you can click the link in the description, or type it into your search bar.
You know, I'm still thinking about that whole comparing games thing. What if I called Going Under like the Sayonara Wild Hearts of roguelikes? Breath of the Wild, but like, it's not. Risk of Rain 2, but you fight capitalism. If the final boss of the Binding of Isaac was just big Jeff Bezos.